Imagine this. Two of Europe's mightiest medieval forces teaming up to face one of history's most infamous empires. But here's the twist. The empire in question isn't Rome or Byzantium at its peak. It's the Angelos dynasty, a Byzantine family famous for, well, not being famous for much except screwing things up. Could the Hungarians and Germans have crushed them? Let's dive in. It's the 12th century. Europe is a chaotic patchwork of kingdoms, duchies, and empires. Meanwhile, the Byzantine Empire is under the control of the Angelos dynasty. If you haven't heard much about them, there's a reason. They're widely regarded as one of the most incompetent ruling families in Byzantine history. Picture the Byzantine Empire as a grand old house, once the envy of the neighborhood, but now with a leaky roof, peeling paint, and tenants who can't stop throwing wild parties. The Angelos rulers were experts at infighting, corruption, and wasting money. Not exactly the qualities you want when your empire is constantly under threat. Now, enter the potential challengers, Hungary and Germany. Two powerful kingdoms, each with their own ambitions and, most importantly, armies that could pack a punch. The Hungarians. Hungary, under its kings like Bela III, was no small fry in medieval Europe. These guys had a strong military tradition, bolstered by a mix of European-style knights and light cavalry inspired by their nomadic roots. Think of them as the medieval Swiss army knife, adaptable and dangerous. The Germans. Meanwhile, the Holy Roman Empire, aka medieval Germany, was like a sleeping giant. With its vast resources and disciplined knights, the Germans were a force to be reckoned with. Under emperors like Frederick Barbarossa, they had proven they could stand toe-to-toe with Europe's toughest foes. The Angelos dynasty, and then there were the Angelos, rulers like Isaac. The second Angelos were more interested in courtly intrigue and lavish feasts than defending the empire. The Byzantine army was a shadow of its former glory, poorly funded, poorly led, and honestly, just plain poor. So let's imagine the Hungarians and Germans decide to team up and take on the Angelos. Could they do it? Step 1. Crossing Byzantine lands first. Logistics. The Byzantines controlled some of the most defensible terrain in the world. Their cities were fortified, and their navy, while not at its peak, still had some bite. A combined Hungarian-German force would need to coordinate perfectly to avoid being bogged down by guerrilla tactics or supply chain issues. Step 2. Sieges and battles. In a head-to-head battle, the Hungarians and Germans would likely have the upper hand. The Byzantine army, under Angelos' leadership, was riddled with corruption and lacked morale. But here's the catch. Byzantium's true strength lay in its cities. Constantinople, with its massive walls and strategic location, would be a nightmare to siege, even for the best armies of the time. Step 3. Byzantine diplomacy. The Angelos weren't great at warfare, but they were cunning diplomats. They could have played the Hungarians and Germans against each other, or called in outside help, like the Seljuks, or even Venice, to tip the scales. So, could the Hungarians and Germans defeat the Angelos? In an open field battle, absolutely. The Byzantine army would likely crumble against the combined might of these two forces. But taking down the entire Byzantine Empire, that's a different story. Unless they could capture Constantinople quickly, a Herculean task, the war could drag on. And history tells us that prolonged campaigns against Byzantium rarely ended well for the attackers. The real question isn't just could they win, but what would winning look like? Would they divide Byzantine lands between them, install a puppet emperor, or just loot and leave? One thing's for sure, the fall of the Angelos wouldn't have fixed Byzantium's deeper problems. Corruption, weak leadership, and external threats were endemic. Even if the Angelos were defeated, the empire might have simply collapsed under the weight of its own dysfunction. So could Hungary and Germany have crushed the Angelos dynasty? Probably. Would it have changed the course of history? Absolutely. But as with most what-ifs, it's the ripple effects that truly fascinate. And hey, speaking of ripple effects, your feedback could shape the future of this channel. Let me know in the comments, how did I do? What topics should I cover next? And don't forget to subscribe. It's like joining an alliance, except this one doesn't involve knights or castles. Or does it? Stick around to find out.